The first time Elena caught someone lying, she was 8. Her father told her the goldfish had swum away to live in a pond. The next morning, she found the tiny body flushed and gone. He lied with kindness, but it planted something inside her, a seed of fascination. How could words twist truth so gently that even pain felt polite? Now she was 34, and lies weren't innocent anymore. They wore perfume, tailored suits, and wedding bands. They smiled during interviews. They voted. They said, "Trust me." Elena worked as a corporate behavioral analyst, hired by companies to vet executives. Her job wasn't to check resumes, it was to read faces. The quiet tick before dishonesty, the delay before fake empathy. She'd been trained in micro-expressions, voice stress, pupil dilation, and the 1,000 tiny betrayals of deceit. She was good, too good. But last Monday, she made a mistake. The client's name was Julian Rains, a charismatic CEO being considered for a massive merger deal. His file was clean, his smile sharper than his cufflinks. When he shook her hand, he held her gaze 1 second too long, not as dominance but calibration. He was reading her as she read him. "Miss Hart," he said smoothly. "They tell me you can see through anyone." She smiled. "Only those who blink." His lips curved faintly. "Then I'll keep my eyes open." That was their first duel, though neither admitted it. By the end of the session, she'd written no clear deception indicators in her report. He'd been flawless. But something unsettled her. He was too symmetrical, too still. No fluctuations in pitch, no subconscious self-touches, no classic stress tells. It wasn't confidence, it was rehearsal. The kind of control born from studying manipulation itself. That night, she rewatched the interview footage. Frame by frame, she slowed his every word, every blink. Her heart caught when she realized he never did. Julian Rains hadn't blinked once in 47 minutes. Elena didn't tell her superiors. They liked him. He brought profit, charm, and influence. They wouldn't care about the absence of something as small as a blink. So she did what she always did when something didn't add up. She kept watching. Over the week, she attended 2 more of his presentations. Each time, he held entire rooms in trance. His gestures precise, voice magnetic. He didn't just speak. He guided. People laughed on cue, nodded in rhythm. He mirrored emotions so perfectly it felt rehearsed by the second. By Friday, Elena's notebook was filled with observations. No startled response to sudden sound. Micro delays before answering questions about empathy. 0 blinks when discussing ethics or charity projects. She wrote in the margin, either sociopath or something worse. At midnight, she couldn't sleep. She lay staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe she was slipping. Her mentor once warned her, "Study liars too long, and you start to see ghosts in honest eyes." Still, she couldn't shake it. So she reached out to Dr. Voss, an old psychology professor who specialized in deception detection. She sent him the interview clip. The next morning, he called, voice heavy. "Elena, where did you get this?" "Corporate screening." "Why?" He hesitated. This man, his behavioral control is ... advanced. No involuntary eye micro-twitches. No autonomic leakage. It's not normal. Could he be trained? Yes, but not in anything public. There's a classified government study on ocular discipline agents taught to regulate blink rate to project dominance and sincerity simultaneously. But those programs ended years ago. Or, she said quietly, they didn't. The next day, Julian requested a private follow-up. He said it was to clarify some assessment details. His tone was polite, his email precise. They met in the top-floor conference room, glass walls, late sunlight slanting gold across polished wood. He wore the same controlled smile. "I heard you reviewed my footage," he said, settling opposite her. Her pulse skipped. "That's standard." I didn't authorize it. You signed a consent form. He leaned forward. You didn't watch like an analyst. You watched like a believer. She frowned. Believer in what? In monsters, he said. The air thinned. He smiled. I read your file, Elena. I know why you do this job. Your father's lie. The goldfish. That's not analysis, it's obsession. How did you? You left your notebook on the table during our last session. He tapped his temple. I read people too. Her throat went dry. He continued. You think I'm lying about who I am. Maybe I am. But tell me this. Do you know what happens when you tell the truth too perfectly? She whispered. People stop believing you. He nodded slowly. Exactly. Truth wears out faster than lies. He stood, buttoned his jacket. You can't spot a liar who believes his own story, Miss Hart, because to him it's not a lie. And then he left, leaving her staring at the empty chair, his words echoing like static. That night, Elena sat in her car outside his building. She told herself it was curiosity, not fear. But fear hums differently. It lives in the chest, not the mind. Through the glass doors, she watched him exit, smiling, shaking hands, charming everyone. She zoomed in on her phone camera. Even under flashing lights, his eyes stayed still. A man like that didn't blink because he didn't need to. Lies, she realized, weren't his shield, they were his language. And he had just started speaking to her. The following week, Elena's world began to tilt in small, deliberate ways, emails disappearing, meetings rescheduled without notice, people glancing at her and then away as if remembering they shouldn't. It started subtle. It always did. She'd learned from her work that manipulation rarely begins with confrontation. It begins with confusion. A lie, after all, doesn't demand belief, it only demands doubt. By Wednesday, her name had been removed from the merger report, the same file she'd authored. When she asked the secretary, the woman blinked nervously and said, Mr. Raines wanted to streamline credits. Elena smiled tightly. Streamline truth, you mean? That night, she sat in her office surrounded by screens, the light turning her reflection into something ghost-like. She rewatched Julian's interview again, this time focusing not on his stillness but on herself. In the mirror's edge, she caught her own image leaning forward, pupils dilating slightly, pulse visible in her neck. She looked hypnotized. That terrified her more than anything. Julian hadn't lied to her, he'd led her. And she followed willingly. The next morning, she got a message from an unknown number. Curiosity is dangerous, Miss Hart. Stop watching me before you forget which one of us is lying. No signature. No timestamp, just that. She traced the number. It was a ghost line, untraceable. She closed her laptop and locked her phone in a drawer. Her hands shook. Then she laughed bitterly at herself. Fear, she reminded herself, was just information. Still, she decided to record her own behavior. She set up a hidden camera in her office, not for others, but for herself. She needed proof that reality hadn't bent. When Julian showed up unannounced that afternoon, she nearly knocked her coffee over. He smiled as if they were old friends. Relax, he said softly. I come bearing peace. Peace from what? Your paranoia. He glanced around, taking in her papers, her notes, her camera hidden under a stack of folders. His gaze lingered there just a second too long. You're documenting me. Her pulse jumped. Standard protocol. He smiled faintly. You think documentation protects you? It doesn't. Evidence can be rewritten. Perception can't. Is that a threat? He shook his head. A prediction. He stepped closer, invading her air with quiet precision. Tell me, Elena, what do you see when you look at me? She forced herself to hold his gaze. Someone who practices control because chaos terrifies him. His expression didn't change, but something in the room did. A hum under the silence. "Good," he said finally. "But be careful. You can study the monster so long you start borrowing its face." Then he left. That night, Elena watched the new recording. She focused on her own body language, how her eyes flicked between his and the door, how she leaned back when he smiled, how her breathing synced unconsciously to his rhythm. It was horrifying to realize that control could look like comfort. She rewound and noticed something she hadn't before. When he stood close, the light behind him flickered like a pulse. Her own pupils dilated in response. It was primal fight, flight, or fascination. She hit pause and whispered to herself, "He's conditioning me." And suddenly she understood the trick. Julian didn't just use dark psychology, he weaponized empathy. He mirrored others until their emotional reflexes aligned with his tone. When he said, "Trust me," the brain believed it because he had already sensed to their heartbeat. It wasn't about lies, it was about rhythm. The next day, she visited Dr. Voss again, her old professor. His office was cluttered with books, coffee mugs, and quiet exhaustion. He listened carefully as she described everything: the mirror effect, the lack of blinking, the rhythm matching. When she finished, he said softly, "You're describing a high-level mimic. They study micro-behavior to bypass rational analysis. It's a form of psychological contagion." Contagion? "Emotion spreads faster than thought," he said. "He's creating a feedback loop. He reflects you until you reflect him. Eventually, you can't tell whose emotions you're feeling." Elena exhaled slowly. "That's terrifying." He nodded. "That's control." She frowned. "How do you stop it?" Voss looked at her with tired eyes. "You break the mirror." "How?" "Disrupt his rhythm. Change the pace. Speak in fragments. Look away. Breathe wrong." She almost laughed. "Breathe wrong?" "Yes," he said seriously. "When you control your breathing, you control the tempo of the interaction. It's not about power, it's about tempo." She scribbled notes, her hand trembling slightly. Before she left, he added, "Elena, be careful. The moment you stop being predictable, people like him don't just lose interest, they retaliate." That night, she sat in her car outside her apartment complex, listening to the rhythmic tick of the dashboard clock. She inhaled, exhaled, offbeat, broken rhythm. She practiced smiling out of sync with thought, breathing irregularly, tapping her fingers in random patterns. It felt unnatural, but that was the point. Inside, she poured herself a drink and looked at her reflection. "Break the mirror," she whispered. "Break the mirror." The next day, when Julian called her into another review meeting, she walked in already off-tempo. She smiled too early, blinked too often, laughed once at nothing. He studied her with the faint confusion of a man whose script had been changed mid-scene. "Rough morning?" he asked, tone smooth. "Maybe," she said brightly. "You ever dream you're being watched?" He tilted his head. "Are you?" "Constantly." Something flickered behind his eyes, not fear, not guilt calculation. "You're testing me." "I thought that was your job," she said. For the first time, his expression cracked a microsecond glitch, but real. His eyes twitched. He blinked, just once. But she saw it. It was the smallest victory, but it felt like fire. When the meeting ended, he didn't shake her hand. He only said, "Be careful what you wish to prove, Ms. Hart." She smiled thinly. "You just blinked." His mouth twitched. "And you just lied." He left, and the silence trembled like held breath. That night, Elena reviewed the recording again. It was there, the blink. Proof that even the most disciplined liar had limits. She paused the frame and stared at his face frozen on screen, the tiniest fracture in perfection. She whispered to herself, "Everyone lies eventually." But deep inside, a quieter voice asked, "Then what happens when the liar starts believing his own lie again?" The question lingered long after the screen went dark. And from somewhere outside her apartment window, a pair of eyes watched, unblinking. Elena couldn't shake the image of that single blink. It replayed in her head like a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, human. Proof he wasn't invincible. Proof that control had a limit. But the satisfaction lasted only hours. By morning, her office badge didn't work. Her emails were locked. Her name vanished from the employee directory. She called HR. A system error, they said. But she heard hesitation in the voice, a pause half a second too long. The kind of pause that said someone rewrote your existence. By noon, she knew who. Julian. The man didn't threaten with words, he erased. She sat alone in the break room, hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee, watching the hallway camera blink red. A security guard walked by twice, eyes sliding past her like she didn't exist. She realized what was happening. He wasn't just lying to her anymore. He was lying about her. The most dangerous kind of lie isn't spoken, it's structural. It becomes the new version of truth. At 5, she left the building carrying nothing but her laptop and a folder marked personal. This sunset turned the glass towers into sheets of gold, the kind that blinds you just enough to miss the fall. Halfway to her car, her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Blink once if you're still watching me. Her hands froze. The text app crashed a moment later. When she restarted the phone, the message was gone. That night, she went to Dr. Voss again. The old man looked worse, eyes hollow, fingers stained with ink. "You were right," she said. "He's retaliating." Voss nodded slowly. "Of course. You challenged his narrative. For men like him, narrative is survival. I think he's framing me. Then gather truth faster than he builds the lie," he said softly. "And remember, liars never destroy evidence. They hide it inside the truth." Elena frowned. "Meaning?" "Look for what's too perfect." She spent the night analyzing the company's shared server logs, searching for patterns. Everything Julian touched was flawless, files pristine, timestamps aligned, every transaction balanced, too clean. That was the tell. Hidden in one of the folders was a video file with a misleading name, training_module_7.mp4. She clicked it open. The screen filled with grayscale footage of a windowless room. 6 people sat in chairs around a table. Each wore a small metal clip near their eye blink monitor. A voice off camera said, "Begin the mirroring sequence." One by one, the participants repeated phrases. "I am calm. I am honest. I am safe." Their eyes remained open, motionless. The voice continued, "Now lie." Each person repeated, "I am lying. I am lying." Still, no one blinked. Elena's breath caught. At the bottom of the screen, the timestamp read Project Ophidian. The file ended abruptly. When she tried to replay it, the video deleted itself automatically. Her pulse hammered. She searched the word Ophidian. It meant snake-like, serpent. Serpents, creatures that shed skin and never blink. She sat frozen for a full minute, piecing it together. Julian wasn't just a liar. He was part of something larger, a psychological conditioning experiment built around controlling empathy, deception, and truth perception. A network. And she'd stumbled right into it. By morning, her apartment door was ajar. Inside, nothing was missing, but everything had moved. The small shifts that screamed precision. Drawers opened, papers rearranged, the faint smell of cologne lingering in the air. Her notebook, the one she'd labeled "Moves He Makes," was gone. On the counter sat a folded note written in looping handwriting. Lies are oxygen, Elena. Stop breathing. She sat on the couch, shaking, feeling the full weight of the message. He wasn't trying to silence her. He was trying to exhaust her sense of reality. That's how gaslighting truly wins, not by convincing you of a lie, but by draining your energy to fight it. By evening, she made a plan. She couldn't go to the police, they'd laugh. She couldn't tell her bosses, they'd already chosen him. She needed evidence undeniable enough that even a liar couldn't rewrite it. She called Dr. Voss one last time. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. At midnight, her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A man's voice whispered, "Elena Hart?" "Yes, this is Officer Grayson. I'm calling from the city morgue. We found a contact number for you in the belongings of a Dr. Leonard Voss." Her knees buckled. What happened? Car accident, late evening. No other vehicles involved. She dropped the phone. It landed screen up, still glowing. Her reflection looked like someone she didn't recognize, haunted, thinner, smaller. She didn't sleep that night. She stared at the window until dawn and finally whispered, "You killed him, didn't you?" Her reflection didn't answer, but deep down she felt the echo of his voice in her head. Truth wears out faster than lies. When she arrived at work the next day, a new employee ID waited on her desk. Her photo, her name, but her title had changed. Behavioral Consultant, Liaison, Julian Rains. He'd promoted her. She stared at the badge, cold crawling down her spine. He was pulling her closer, not pushing her away, like a spider reeling back the fly. A message popped up on her screen seconds later. "Congratulations, Ms. Hart. You're ready for the next test." Attached was a file named blink_test_subject_a.mp4. Her cursor hovered, trembling. She pressed play. It was footage of her, sitting in her office, speaking to Julian, smiling, unaware that a small metal sensor had been clipped to the corner of her blouse, the same kind used in Project Ophidian. Her breath caught as the on-screen timer began counting. 0:00, 0:15, 0:30. Her on-screen self didn't blink. She recoiled from the screen, heart pounding, throat dry. The realization hit her like a slow collapse. He'd already conditioned her. Every confrontation, every session, every mirrored conversation wasn't defense training. It was programming. He'd been teaching her to control her micro-behavior, shaping her responses until she could lie flawlessly, until she could be like him. Her phone buzzed again. A new text. "Now you see how easy it is." No signature, but she didn't need one. Her reflection in the dark monitor smiled faintly before she did. And for the first time, Elena wasn't sure who was lying anymore. Elena didn't move for a full minute. The video kept looping, each replay whispering the same betrayal. Her image stared from the screen comm, unblinking, perfect, controlled. She closed the laptop slowly, her reflection sliding across the glossy surface like a stranger's face. The line between liar and listener had blurred. Somewhere in the experiment, she'd stopped observing him and started absorbing him. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "He's rewriting me." Outside, rain slicked the city streets in ribbons of silver. She could almost hear Julian's voice in the thunder. You can't spot a liar who believes their own story. For the first time, she wondered if he'd been right. She spent the night trying to remember when the conditioning began, when his tone became her tempo. Every smile, every tilt of her head, every mirrored pause had rewired something. But awareness was the cure to control. If he had taught her rhythm, she could use it. At dawn, she opened her laptop again and began recording her own version of the truth. "My name is Elena Hart," she said, voice steady. and I am not who they want me to be. She outlined everything Project Ophidian, the manipulation, the conditioning, the deaths, the silence. She spoke clearly, not for sympathy, but for survival. Words were her only weapon now. When she was done, she uploaded the video anonymously to 5 encrypted channels and sent copies to independent journalists. Not truth seekers, pattern hunters. The kind of people who knew that lies, when repeated too perfectly, became coordinates. Then she waited. At 9 a.m., her phone rang. Julian. She answered. I was expecting you. His voice was smooth as ever. You've been busy. You taught me to be. You sent something, he said. That's unfortunate. No, she said. That's truth. He chuckled softly. Truth is fragile, Elena. It breaks the moment someone doubts it. Then let's see whose breaks first. He paused. Come to the tower. Now. Alone. Her pulse thudded. And if I don't? Then I'll tell the world you made everything up. You've already proven you can't be trusted. You're the perfect unreliable narrator. He hung up. By noon, she was in the elevator to the top floor of Rains Industries, the same place where this had all started. Each ding of the elevator doors echoed like a countdown. When the doors opened, he was waiting, same immaculate suit, same effortless calm. Miss Hart, he said warmly. You look tired. You look rehearsed. He smiled. Truth always needs rehearsal. Lies perform themselves. She stepped closer. You trained me to mirror you, Julian. To absorb your tells, your tone, your calm. Yes, he said. And you did beautifully. Then you should be afraid. His smile faltered, just slightly. Why's that? Because now, she said softly, I can lie as well as you can. For a moment, silence filled the room like static. He circled her slowly, studying her. You think exposing me will fix anything? The world doesn't want the truth. It wants certainty. And I give them that, by erasing everyone who sees through you. He shrugged. They call it leadership. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small drive. This contains every file you deleted, every mirror test, every participant. I found your archive. He laughed quietly. You didn't. Her lips curved. You taught me where to look inside what's too perfect. Julian's expression flickered. You realize if you release that, you'll destroy yourself too. You're part of the data now. You're contaminated. I'd rather die telling the truth than live inside your lie. He took a step forward, voice lower now. You think people care who's lying. They just care who looks more certain. Then let's see which of us looks like the truth. She placed the flash drive on the table between them. This is my confession, she said. And it's also yours. He stared at it, eyes narrowing. You recorded this conversation, didn't you? Of course, she said. But I didn't have to. You're not talking to me. You're performing for the camera you already assumed was watching. He turned sharply. His gaze darted across the ceiling, scanning for hidden lenses. And that was when she saw it, the smallest tremor in his eye, another blink. Caught again, she whispered. He froze, realizing too late that in his search for control, he had given away proof of fear. You see? She said quietly. Lies always blink first. He exhaled slowly. You've learned well, better than you think. She reached for the flash drive. I'm done playing mirrors, Julian. You don't get to define my reality anymore. He gave a faint, knowing smile. You'll never convince them. Maybe not, but I'll make them question. And that's enough. She turned to leave. Behind her, he said softly, You're not free of me, Elena. She paused at the elevator, looking back over her shoulder. You're right. I'm not. You're part of the story now. And I'm the one telling it. The next day, The video she uploaded reached 1 million views. Then 2, then 10. People debated whether it was real, fabricated, AI-generated, performance art. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that people questioned. Julian disappeared from public view. His company issued statements about mental health leave, but the whispers spread faster than denial. Elena quit her job and began consulting independently, teaching others how to detect manipulation, how to break psychological conditioning, how to read their own reflection again. She titled her first course, Blink, and every time she lectured, she began with the same line: "You can't spot a liar who believes their story until you stop believing theirs." The audience always sat in stunned silence, listening, learning, doubting everything. At the end of her sessions, she looked into the camera and spoke directly to her viewers. If this story made you look closer, share it. If it made you feel something, subscribe. And if you've ever met a liar who smiled too perfectly, comment your story below. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be heard. She smiled faintly, the light reflecting in her eyes. And this time she blinked once, slowly, deliberately. Proof that she was still human. If this story made you rethink how easily lies hide behind confidence, subscribe for more dark psychology stories. Share this with someone who's been gaslit, manipulated, or silenced. And comment below, what's the most convincing lie you've ever believed? Together, we expose how evil hides in plain sight, and how truth still finds its voice.